Hello and welcome to the CX Files for March 20th, 2025. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And I'm Peter Ryan, back in Montreal from a great visit to Hermosillo, Mexico at the Alliance BPO Leadership Summit. Great success all around, Mark. Many people who were down there, former guests of the podcast, and they all wish our listeners and yourself all the best.
Okay, excellent. That's fantastic. So this week we are exploring your trip to Germany recently, aren't we? Now, this was a couple of weeks ago.
It was, and it was a short trip. I won't get into the travel details, but suffice to say, I had hoped that it was going to be somewhat longer. The airline I was traveling with, due to a strike, had different ideas, and I had to get out sooner rather than later if I was going to make it home in any semblance of form. But the good news was I did get a full day at the trade show for CCW 2025 held in Berlin. Now, Mark, for those who aren't aware, this is probably the premier CX trade show globally, in my opinion. I went for the first time last year, had a phenomenal visit, got to meet tons of organizations, tons of executives. And what I loved about it was the fact that all the things I was being shown in February 2024, I was seeing play out in terms of new developments, new technologies, new processes through the course of the rest of the year. 2025, very similar dynamic. Lots of people, was able to reconnect with a lot of old friends. And one of the things I did this year was I invited a number of my BPO executive colleagues to join me at the event. Tickets were readily available. All people had to do was arrange their travel and accommodation. Berlin is relatively accessible to get to. So we had a number of folks that joined. What I did for this episode was I decided it would be interesting to bring on a couple of, I would say, some of the more visionary thought leaders that participated in the trip. So we have Sherif Kamel, who is the country manager for Raya CX, who joined. Now, he is based in Poland. He is Raya's country manager for Poland. And equally speaking, we had joining us from the UK, Rachel Poku, who is the CEO of the growing company. It is called CXHero. And Rachel spends a lot of time in Ghana, where the delivery point is, but she is from the UK. And I spent the course of our interview chatting with both these individuals about what their impressions were about CCW 25. What were their key takeaways? What was the experience like coming to CCW for the first time? And I think we're going to hear that there were a lot of interesting takeaways in that sense.
Did you see anybody talking about AI in CX this year?
So that was one of the big takeaways that we did discuss, the fact that there was almost an overwhelming submergence of AI. And to be fair to CCW 2025, they were very open about the fact that the theme was about how AI was impacting CX. So there were definitely going to be a lot of vendors there. I think that the element that you'll be hearing about during the course of the discussion with Rachel and with Sherif is the fact that at a certain point you can't see the forest for the trees. And it kind of reminds me of when I went, because I had the same experience at the event. I remember when I'll make a comparison. I went to visit the Chicago Art Institute, the one where they filmed Ferris Bueller. That's how everybody knows that. I mean, they've got some amazing stuff, but you go there and after 2 to 3 hours, you just can't take in anymore. You can't absorb anymore. And that's what this was like, in my opinion. At CCW Berlin, you were being bombarded with AI messaging and different solutions. And every company had a solution that was going to revolutionize the way CX was going to be done. Nobody else had this solution, and you had to talk to them. I would caution that any trade show looking to bring people back needs to think about a good balance of not just individuals from one particular domain or technology or function, but across the ecosystem. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to navigate.
Yeah, I saw a couple of the presentations, especially from some of the big BPOs, big European BPOs. But the most memorable one I saw was the Hyundai guys, because again, of course, they mentioned AI, but actually I think their presentation was only about 3 pages long. They just kept it really simple and just said,
Yeah.
look, here are some results from us working with people recently in Germany, and it just basically had, here's like half a dozen case studies, and that was pretty much about it. So I thought that that was a very good approach to take, because everybody's being bombarded with the possibilities. Here's what may be possible for you to do in future, rather than, here's what we've done in the last 6 months with our clients, and you could be doing the same thing too.
Agreed. And talking about Day, one of the funniest posts of on LinkedIn from the event, at least that I was privy to, was a photo of myself with Wasi Arambatsis, with Klaas van Delden, and Mike Ortegon in front of the Day logo. And the caption that was put underneath the post on LinkedIn was "the greatest CX boy band that never was." I have a sneaking suspicion I know who was responsible for that post. I'm not going to mention names here, but Chris, we know you're listening. But look, Mark, I don't want to take away from the content that I was able to recoup from both Rachel and Sherif, which is phenomenal. Some great learnings, some great insights. So I'm going to recommend that we go directly to the interview with Rachel Poku and with Sherif Kamel to find out their views about CCW 2025 in Berlin. The CX Files this week is very lucky to bring into the arena, so to speak, two individuals who I had the chance to spend a lot of time with last week, and we did so at CCW Berlin. Now, for those who don't know, CCW Berlin is one of the flagship conferences and trade shows that happens in our industry annually. It is truly, I think, a unique gathering of individuals. And what I thought would be important would be to grab a couple of individuals that took part and joined me at the event to get a few impressions that they had of what CCW Berlin 2025 was like. And with that in mind, we are very, very delighted to bring into the fold Rachel Poku, who is the CEO of CXHero. She joins us from Accra in Ghana. Rachel, great to see you.
Hi, Peter. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you are more than welcome. Thanks for joining. And we've also got Sherif Kamel, who is the country manager for Poland, and he is with Raya CX. Sherif, always great to see you. Thanks for taking some time to hop on the pod today.
Thank you, Peter. It's an honor to be on this podcast. I've
The
always
honor,
heard it, and it's amazing.
the honor is ours. And I think for both of you, the two of you are newbies to the CX Files, aren't you?
Yep,
Okay.
I've
Okay.
always
Well,
heard it before, but I mean, it provides amazing insights, but I've never had the chance to be on one.
there's all good things to those who wait, as they say.
Yeah, I feel very
Um,
famous now.
Well, you're a legend in your own mind, Sharif. And for those of you who are listening and are shocked at this, just to let everybody know, Sharif and I are old friends. Notice that I said old Sharif, not long time, old friends. Uh,
Yeah,
I'm feeling older and
yeah.
older each week. So long and the short of it, I wanted to talk to both of you a little bit about the experience that we all shared in Berlin at CCW. And Rachel, I'm going to start with you. Can you talk to me a little bit about what prompted you to take some time to travel to CCW this year? And maybe talk a little bit about what was your anticipation for what you expected from the event itself?
Yeah, of course. I'd say for me it was my first time coming across CCW since I'm quite new to the outsourcing industry. It's been 2, 3 years now. So I was literally just searching for events around customer experience and outsourcing for the year 2025. And CCW stood out to me as basically a leading event in the industry. So I kind of thought, you know what, I have to be here. And I think my experience with just conferences in general, it can be overwhelming. So honestly, coming into CCW, I wouldn't say I expected much, but I had actually spoken to, I guess, a mutual buddy of ours, Mark, who said, no, I need to come. Peter's going to be there. You need to meet Peter. And he really just sold it to me. So I just decided, you know what? I have to come. And honestly, what really grabbed my attention at the conference was just the focus of the intersection between humans and AI. I think a lot of mainstream conversation these days is around AI replacing the need for humans, which I think is so inaccurate. So I was really just interested to see what that intersection is, how's that being portrayed, and what are other providers doing that I can also learn from. So I'd say that's what prompted me to look into CCW and to fly to Berlin to be a part of that. And I'm glad I did.
We are glad that you did too, because we did get to meet. And you're referring to our mutual friend Mark Hurd from Arwen, who is an absolutely wonderful person, and certainly we spent a lot of time with in Berlin as well. Sherif, I'll flip it over to you. From your perspective, as somebody who lives relatively close to Berlin, and I say relatively, I mean from the standpoint of perhaps somebody who's in Ghana or somebody who's in Canada, Poland
Yep.
is not too far, but it's still a day's travel back and forth. Can you
Yep.
explain what was your motivation to attend CCW this year, and what did you get out of the event itself, if you were to highlight it maybe in two or three bullet points?
Okay, so CCW is one of the most comprehensive events when it comes to Europe, as well as specifically the German market, because this is one of the biggest markets that we target in our service provision. So I wanted to stay ahead of what's going on in the German market and in the technologies in general. So that was one of the key objectives. I expected to see what's going on with AI, how the German market see it, and how the European market see it. Because views might differ from Asia to Europe to USA or North America and Latin America. And definitely, it was a good decision. I had a lot of outcomes from visiting it. Mm, and of course, the one of the key objectives was networking. So I hope I summed it up in a nutshell for you.
I think that you did. And, I want to go back to you, Rachel, because you used an expression a little while ago about conferences and trade shows. They can be overwhelming. And I think that for anybody who's a first timer to CCW in Berlin, it definitely has the potential to be just that. I remember when I went for the first time last year, I was blown out of the water. The fact that they had like 4 or 5 halls, just literally chock-a-block full of exhibitors and all sorts of different companies that were participating and taking part. This year there was a definitive theme, and it was all around the impact of AI on customer experience. And there were a tremendous number of organizations that had booths that were on the floor that were selling their wares and so forth. Rachel, what in the context of that would you say that your key takeaways were about CCW Berlin as you walked around the floor and you had a chance to meet some of the individuals and hear a little bit about some of their solutions?
So key takeaways. I'd say it definitely provided me with fresh insights. But CCW Berlin was definitely a fantastic showcase of how AI is transforming the customer service industry and not replacing human interaction per se, but actually enhancing it. I'd say one of the biggest takeaways for me was seeing how businesses that strategically integrate AI solutions can be more efficient whilst delivering customer support, top-notch customer support. I'd say another thing that really stood out was how the future of customer support isn't just about automation, but about blending AI with human empathy. There was it wasn't a workshop. There was what's the word I'm trying to find? There was a company that basically displayed how AI can help resolve issues faster, and to improve customer satisfaction. But what the AI did was it was able to actually include filler words into, the response by saying, which kind of made it more human rather than an AI robot that speaks perfectly and does everything perfectly. And also another key thing was the fact that the AI could basically um the AI could detect changes in the emotions of the human and also just adapt to that, which was really interesting and what isn't something that I've seen. So I think that the key takeaway was just the fact that AI is enhancing customer service and there's just so much innovation to, happen.
I think that's really, really good insight from somebody who was like myself, walking the floor, getting a chance to see what was on display, to see what people were selling. Sherif, from your vantage point, as you think about your time at CCW Berlin, I'll go back to a word that Rachel used earlier. Overwhelmed was a comment I heard from a lot of people that were there about the sheer volume of the vendors that were participating, that had booths, that you would go from one to the next, and everybody seemed to have this unique AI selling point that nobody else had and that was going to change the world. They had the secret sauce and it was proprietary to themselves. At what point, as a potential buyer or as a potential partner for some of these companies, at what point do you get sensory overload and are you able to process what you're hearing from one vendor, from one booth to the next? Do you hit a law of diminishing returns at some point in a situation like that?
Well, let me start by saying that you were spot on when you said overwhelmed, and Rachel was perfectly accurate in this word. Four holes, an enormous amount of people talking about AI. And as you said, everyone is saying, "Oh, I've got the secret recipe for that." And when you listen to the details, when you dig down, it's not always the secret recipe. It's sometimes it's not even AI. So I can't say at what point you start getting overwhelmed. I think from the from the onset of walking in, everything is focused on AI to the point of having a robot walk around saying hi and cheese and that you take pictures with it. That was so nice, so cute. But I can't imagine this robot walking around on the floor in a call center. So it was a nice touch. It was grabbing attention. But if I would talk about the outcomes from, I would say, two positive and two negative uh, outcomes. The positive ones would be basically that there is an enormous potential in AI and machine learning, and how we focus on enhancing efficiencies and omni-channels. So, and basically working towards top-notch, seamless customer experience. So there's an enormous potential for AI and for reaching that. Are we there yet? I don't think so. I don't think we're very far away. We're getting closer, but it's not fully mature yet. But on the other hand, the negative points would be that I'm not seeing that much of people talking about employee experience and how much we take care of our employees. AI is a scarecrow for everyone, so employees are afraid, okay, so am I gonna have a job next year or not? This is not the case. But other than AI aside, in call centers, 50% of what you do is manage people. It's a man-based industry, human-based, not man-based. So how are we handling, aside from AI, employee engagement, employee experience, and all of that? So that's one thing. And the second thing is the self-service platforms. Everyone is talking AI. Some of the people saying we're doing AI it's actually not AI. It's just very basic self-service trees. So you don't need to sell it as AI. I might not be interested in AI. I'm interested in self-service. So
So that actually raises an interesting point as we think about CCW 2026. Sharif, would a recommendation you'd bring to the table was you got to be more broadly focused on a whole series of different aspects of CX delivery. AI is one, but as you say, employee experience is another,
yep,
workplace culture,
yep,
all sorts of different elements.
yep, definitely,
Okay. Okay. Rachel, would
definitely.
you concur with that? Okay.
No, definitely. I think currently the focus, the hype is AI, and everyone's trying to, get on the AI bandwagon to kind of show that, we're being innovative. But I think just as Sharif said, a lot of companies are not actually being innovative. When you look deep into it, it is, probably just a plugin into ChatGPT. So I think there are so many opportunities to, as you said, explore other parts of the contact center experience, especially even for employees, which I think is a part of contact centers that we often kind of forget about, just the employee experience. So I think that's such an interesting point of things to explore.
So trade shows and booths and attendees are all things that go hand in hand, as are different messages and showcasing. And we've all been to trade shows. I can tell you, I really enjoy them. But I also know that there are ways of vendors that are to make them stand out. You know, if you've got a booth, what can you do to stand out? And let's be frank, I think we'll all agree. We've all received pens, we've all received water bottles, we've all received sunglasses, and they're great. You take them home and then they end up going in the recycling bin or you give them to, friends and family, which is it's an issue in terms of how you showcase yourself at an event like CCW. Did either of you see any vendors that had a particular strategy that made them jump out and made you want to go and find out more from their booth or from their exhibit that was really unique or original in how they presented themselves in terms of CCW in Berlin this year?
Well, I would say Parloa was one. Uh, and actually going in to their booth and starting to talk with them, that was a very, very, very positive experience. It was not a waste of time. Usually the people that would stand out would sometimes would be like, yeah, very glamorous, but when you actually start doing the talking, you don't feel the actual value or link to what you do. But Parloa, no. I would highly, highly recommend even going over there. Again, it was a positive one.
They very impressive, and they didn't really have so much a booth as they had like almost a section of one of the halls, which was very impressive.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and also very very I would say interactive because they had lots of areas in which they could provide demos, both on the floor as well as in more intimate settings and so forth.
And
Rachel, what about you?
and
Was there anything that
just
that
and the people they
Mhm.
picked as well. The people they picked were very interactive and very positive, not like overdoing it.
Yeah,
Yeah, please. Sorry for interrupting.
no problem, no problem. Rachel?
Um, I think you two have literally taken the words out of my mouth because that's the only company that came to mind for me, Parloa. Um, I think they definitely stood out in Hall 2. They had a massive section, the branding was great, and even just as Sharif said, the people were so interactive, so friendly, and actually kind of embodied what customer experience is about. So I think I'm not sure if they purposely did that or if they knew they were doing that. But I think they did such a good job with interacting with people like us who were probably overwhelmed. But I think the section was kind of it was so big that it was safe enough to just go and stand and someone would just come to speak to you. So I think they did an amazing job doing that. Another thing I want to add is there was a company, I probably won't mention which company it was, but they had a waffle stand next to them, and that's what actually attracted me to them. And I must say the waffle was really good. But I'd say just comparing the two, even though the waffle drew me there, it wasn't as engaging as Parloa. So I think both strategies are good. I think food is always a good strategy to get people, and I must say the waffles were great. So yeah, good strategies, I'd say.
Okay, so that's really interesting because I think to use a food analogy, Rachel, what you're saying is you can have the sizzle, but you've got to have the steak behind it as well. Going
Exactly,
from waffles to
exactly.
steaks, and maybe we'll go to fried.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So maybe next booths, people should start offering steak.
that would be good
I
for
think that.
for vegetarians like me. That might not work, but I'll tell
Yeah.
you what. I'll tell you what. I will
I'll
bring the
take your
maple
steak.
syrup from Canada. I'll bring the maple syrup from Canada for the
Okay.
waffles, and that begs the question then. Um, Starting with yourself, Rachel, will you be returning to CCW 2026?
Absolutely. I would love to attend the next CCW and to see what that theme is about. I'm sure it won't be the same about AI and human interaction. But for someone like me in my role, conversations and opportunities for growth are endless with a conference like CCW. So it is a conference that I don't think I can miss, or I should miss, because just aside speaking to service providers, I was able to meet you, Peter. I met so many different people who gave me so much insight into the industry that we're in. Um, Everyone was just so helpful. And even just going back to saying that conferences can be overwhelming, I think this was, I'd say, one of the best conferences I've been to. Even though it was really big, I think maybe it's just because we're all in the customer experience industry, so we know how to speak to people and engage with people. So it just made that a bit easier. And literally just walking up to someone to speak to them, you didn't feel like you had to know exactly what you were speaking to them about. And which that was my position, because I'm here and my question was, what does your company do? Even though it says AI, it's like, what exactly does this AI company do? And everyone was um, really open to share and to just give me pointers on how to grow my business as well. So I think it's an amazing place to meet people and to grow, really.
And I'm going to ask you, Sharif, the same question. Are you planning to attend CCW 2026?
Definitely. It was an amazing value to attend it this year. The networking was very positive. The insights into technology and what's coming next was very positive. I would only advise anyone who's planning on going next year is check who's going to be present over there, check their websites, make a list of who you want to talk to
Yeah.
pre-hand so that you would be able to capitalize on your time because it's overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. And Rachel, I'm going to go back to you because Sharif actually anticipated a question I was going to ask both of you. What advice would you give first timers, like yourselves in 2025? Rachel, what advice would you provide to somebody who's thinking of attending the next CCW?
I'd say firstly, just exactly what Sherif said about connecting ahead of time. I personally did a search on LinkedIn CCW Berlin to see who had even been posting about CCW, connected with them, and planned ahead of time to meet up, which I think is so beneficial, especially with a conference of that size. You can end up going to a conference of that size and not getting the value that you really need to get out of just because it's just huge. So that would be the first thing. And I'd say my second advice is really just dive in. I had two people come up to me. I'm glad I have a friendly face, but they literally walked up to me and said, I don't know who to speak to. And I found it so funny because I felt the same. So then from that, we ended up having a conversation, and I advised them the same, that literally just walk up to someone at a booth and ask them what the company does. Just be willing to engage. And I think it can be hard, especially when there's just so much going on. There's so many conversations being had. It seems like almost no one's free because everyone is in conversation. But I think when you just look, hard enough, you do see that there are people standing there who aren't having a conversation. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the person at the booth, just literally people walking around. I met a young lady who had actually relocated from Jamaica to Germany looking for a job. And that was the first person I had met who was actually at CCW looking for a job. And I was actually able to direct her to someone and even just keep in contact with her because she works within workforce management, which was really cool. So honestly, speak to anyone. You just never know what conversation you'll have and what that will lead to.
All right, and I'm going to give my piece of advice, and that is when you make your travel plans, do an advance check to find out if there's going to be an airport strike where you're flying through on the way home. There's an inside story for everybody who might be listening right now, but I will say a big thank you to Rachel Poku, who joins us from Ghana, and to Sherif Kamel, who's joining us from Poland today. It's been great having you both on the CX Files for the first time, and it won't be the last.
Oh, thank you, Peter. Looking forward to many, many returns.
Thank you, Peter. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week. Hello and welcome to the CX Files for 20th March 2020. Actually, no, it is. Yeah. I thought I got the date wrong.
I was going to say what year wrong.